Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing? Welcome to FCNB and welcome to our Forage Analysis Seminar. 2020 put a halt to it, and we wanted to make sure we get it in this year. Timing's perfect, and I think you're going to find some benefit in the material tonight that our presenter is going to discuss. I'd like to welcome you all here. My name is Matt McCarter. I'm the loan officer here at FCNB in Rolla. And I would like to introduce some of the staff. I think there's girls around here as well. Mark in the chair in the blue shirt, that's Aaron Jeffers. He's our financial advisor. His office is just on that side of the building. Here's Kelly Coley, Paige Sahan, and Teresa Blackman. These girls did a phenomenal job helping put this together, and always a smiling face here. I encourage everybody to come visit with us. We do have this going live on Facebook, so anybody that is not in attendance tonight, if you want to shoot a message, family members, we're live on Facebook right now. We've already got some viewers jumped on. If you're on Facebook and you would like to have the presentation packet that our presenter is going to discuss, send us a private message to First Community National Bank, and we will email you the presentation. Just include your email address on there. This is for our Facebook Live viewers that have joined us as well. We'll send that packet to you so you can follow along. I would like to introduce a very special guest. He hasn't been out of the house much, but the chairman of our board, Mr. Paul Perkins, is here tonight. And I'm glad to see you out, Paul, and here joining us. President of the bank and CEO, his son Scott Perkins will be walking in any minute. Keep those guys around here as long as you want to. Ask them what you want. They're happy to be here and they're happy to talk. So I'd like to introduce tonight's presenter. During the seminar tonight, we're going to discuss what's really in my dry acre baleage. Why should I be forage testing? And are soil samples beneficial to the quality of my forage reproduction? Tonight's presenter was the FFA and Ag instructor for Rolla Public School District for over 20 years. He and his family, which include wife Cindy in the back, and daughters Taylor and Hannah. Taylor's with us in the back. Hannah's interviewing, or probably done by now. So hopefully she's both home all day. We've got some job interviews, but they've been managing a cow-calf operation here in Phelps County for many, many years. Tonight, we're going to learn some very beneficial things about strategies, about earning the benefit of our efforts in soil testing and proper fertilizing techniques, and then harvesting that forage. So without further ado, that I would like to present to you tonight's presenter, Mr. Tom Strain from Elk Prairie Farms right here in Rolla.
That's a pretty formal introduction for an old ag teacher. I'm here to tell you for sure. I just have a couple things that I want to follow on my list. I want to say thank you to FCNB on a couple levels. One is I think it's really important that we gather together and learn and challenge ourselves and do these kinds of events. And we are very grateful for the host of Perkins family and Matt. And then the other level I want to say is that Scott, welcome. That FCNB has welcomed me and my family into the bank a few years ago, and we find this place to be absolutely what we need, fitting us and bend over backwards to take good care of us in our banking needs and friendship. So I would encourage you to look that way if you have those needs as well. Matt said I'm a retired ag teacher. I taught in Salem a long time ago, and well, I'll just tell you kind of a funny story and see how old you are if you can get this. I used to say, well, I taught in Salem. I spent 5 years in Fulton, And then I came to Rolla for 20-some years. So you see some of those smiles. Well, back in the day, the state mental hospital wasn't full, so that kind of gets a chuckle every now and then. That's my teaching. I retired from Rolla, been retired 8 years coming this spring. I was an ag teacher a long time. I started out in a hog farm over in Salem and got a degree in animal science, specialized in animal nutrition and reproductive physiology. And I graduated college in 1981. Now, some of us are old enough to remember that was 18% interest in farm times. And I went home and tried to have a bunch of sows and grew a big garden, ate lots of cabbage, ate lots of pork chops, and decided I'd better do something different. So I went back to university and got my ag education degree, and very, very happy that I did that for a very rewarding career. Matt mentioned that we have a family farm. We, Cindy and I, she mentioned that Cindy and I have included our girls in our family farm, and since the get-go, and we've have a beef cow-calf operation, and we feed some cattle in the west, some of our steers, and some of our heifers. And then the other thing we've done in the last 6 or 8 or 10 years is we have gotten over into developing and marketing our bred heifers. We have worked really hard to be a grass-based operation, pretty low input. Our cattle are primary red Angus base, and we worked really hard to make those cattle fit our environment, fit our paradigm of what we do. Taylor, my oldest daughter, is an ag teacher in Newburgh. I'm very happy about that. I'm glad she's here with us. My next daughter will graduate from the university, Hannah, this spring, and like Matt said, she's been in some interviews today, and we're anxious to hear the report from that when we get done here tonight. Our Facebook friends, this is my first Facebook Live. I think that's pretty cool. Hope it'll be something silly on the screen that haunts me for the rest of my days, right? So I know several in here, friends and neighbors, some I don't. Hope I get the opportunity to visit and meet you tonight. And I just want to say that I am humbled to be asked to come here and perhaps teach you something, and more importantly, we can learn something together that will be beneficial for you. I would say to you that I practice what I preach as best I can, and that we do these things that I'm going to talk to you and recommend tonight. I look around this room and I kind of get some visions that are pretty old, because there's some students of mine in this group that I can see them sitting there as 14-year-old people, and John didn't used to shave back then. Stacy, I don't know what to say. Loretta, I won't say anything about you. So anyway, so that's very cool, very rewarding to me. Virtual listeners, Matt asked me, and I'll remind you that if you want this packet of information that we're going to work from and teach from tonight, then you need to send a notice of your email in a comment box. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Private messages.
And then Matt will right away, or some of the gals will right away get that information to you, hopefully that you can follow along. A couple of housekeeping things that I want to talk about. Questions, my students know this, questions are always welcome. The only foolish question is the one that didn't get asked. I will say this, however, you asked me a question tonight, I very well might turn that question back on you, and then we'll address it from the group. I also might postpone your question to think that we're going to do it or hit that point a little bit later. So I just wanted to let you know that. With that, I want to take a couple minutes and explain my paperwork. So if you want to look in your book, and of course the real teacher is going to come out in it, I'm sure. If you can see the first 6 pages number.
Yes.
Okay, the first 6 pages. Stopping where it says questions. The first 6 page is the outline of our lesson. It's the skeleton of what we're gonna do. It's the highlights of what we're gonna discuss and talk about. And I want you to notice, and I'm on where it says directions for the seminar. I want you to notice I put on there what we're gonna discuss. So I'm gonna lead this, and then we're gonna look and figure out and can talk. After the page that says questions is a set of 8 through 26. And those are reference pages, page 8 through 26. And as we go through our lesson, then I'm going to tell you where we're going to see some of this stuff that's going to support what we're talking about. So I would encourage you to get a pen and jot that down, so hopefully that you can take this home and review and think about some of the things that we talked about tonight. As an old ag teacher, one of the things we teach students about, primarily for public speaking, but in any kind of presentation, we say, okay, FFA member, you want to get up there and you want to tell your audience what it is you're going to tell them. You hear that? I'm going to tell you what it is I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then the second thing I'm going to do, what do you suppose that is? I'm going to tell it to you, right? And what's the third thing I'm going to do? I'm going to tell you what I told you. Now, why do we do that? It sounds pretty redundant. It is redundant. But the point of it is I want to introduce the new information to you. And then we want to dwell into the information. And then I think it's equally important that we summarize what it is we talked about. I think we can prove that by how many times have you watched a movie more than once? Typically what happens when you saw that movie the second time? You saw much more information or content or action than you did the first time. And that's kind of the premise for that. So as I tell you what it is we're going to talk about, that's this page that says direction for the seminar. I want us tonight to discuss soil sampling, soil nutrients, soil analysis, overall importance, and I want you to write on there removal rates. I'm going to tell you something else, and I'm going to say this several times tonight. I've stole this from somebody somewhere, but I believe it to be very important that we can't really manage anything in our business that we don't measure. I'll say that again. I don't think that we can manage anything in our business that we don't measure. We really don't know, do we? How can we change something if we don't know what our start and what our finish was? Now, I believe in that, and we're going to talk about that several times. So we're going to talk about soils pretty quickly. Now, you might say, I came here to do hay. Well, I'm going to tell you that's a pretty integral part of doing hay and bales. The second thing, we're going to get right to what we're after. We're going to talk about hay and forage sampling methods. Terry, you've been nice enough to bring us a bale. We're going to go outside and show you how to take a sample. We're going to talk about the analysis information. We're going to talk practically about how to use those results. I think that you have said in seminars or presentations where someone maybe talked over us, maybe talked in such scientific information that it was difficult to digest that much content, and when we left, we had a brow, and we thought, dang, that was pretty good information, but I'm not sure how to use it. And I hope we can be better than that tonight. So I'm going to be really talking to you about practical things that I think you can take home. I think it's important we talk about hay yields and forage nutrient removals. You're going to hear me say that a couple times. I think also it's important, and you might write this one down, is I think it's important that we think about the factors that can affect our hay after we get it grown and on the ground. We have a pretty big leverage in the quality of that hay going in our storage that's on us after we've done a good job prepping the soil and growing the product. The third thing I'd like to talk about is what do we do with this analysis? What do we do with this soil and hay sampling information? That's the practical part of it. How can you use it? Those are the tools I hope you can put in your toolbox. Then finally, and I was just a little bit apprehensive about this part, but I think it's interesting. I think you'll find it beneficial to talk about a little bit, is the beef cow nutritional needs are satisfying those nutritional needs and the components that we could use in balancing a ration. What inputs are we going to do? And again, we can't manage what we can't measure. I think that's really, really important. All right, so that's where we're going. That's our roadmap. I have told you what it is. I'm going to tell you. Now I'm going to start doing it, right? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about soils. We're going to do that pretty quickly, but I think it's really important that we have that piece in here. Now, you should find a handout that says soil, and then it should say soil sampling. Then I'd like for you to put pages 8, 9, and 10 by soil sampling. I hope you kind of get this and grasp it. So what I'm telling you is that supporting pages 8, 9, and 10 are going to be working right with soil sampling. All right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who can take a sample? Do you have to be certified to take a sample? No. Does it take a scientific expertise? No, it doesn't. Do you have to have specialized tools? No, not really. So turn to page 8, please. This came right out of an old ag teaching booklet, and it is how you take a soil sample. Should have been taught to sophomores in ag class. Number 1, what do? Read that to me, somebody. Tell me what number 1 says. If I'm going to take a soil sample, what do I need to do?
Regulating surface matter, grass on the.
Okay, and does that mean we're gonna dig? No, we're gonna just wipe that away, aren't we? We really don't want that organic matter that's not developed in there yet. So then just turn and take an eyeball at page 10. Just look over there and take a look at page 10. Keep that kind of in your view, and that's going to tell you the tools that you might use. Page 11, sorry, okay, I may be one off. Page 11 is going to show you some of the tools to take a soil sample. All right. Not very scientific, thank you. Not very scientific. What am I going to need? Go back to your page that says take the soil sample. It says materials and equipment. I want to talk to you about that a little bit. Obviously, it could be a shovel. It needs to be clean. Why would that be important? If I go in my barn and get a round point shovel off the wall, we've been building a house this fall. What do you think might be on my shovel? What? Okay, what else? Contaminants. Concrete on mine. Is that going to affect the soil sample? Yes, it is. So what are you going to do? You want to wash that thing off. Now, if it's got dried concrete on it, it's not going to chip away. You're good. But make sure that you don't have oil on it, that you don't have feedstuffs on it, that you don't have manure on it. Wash that thing off pretty clean. You don't have to scrub it till it's gone, but just wash it off clean. Water is going to neutralize that. The other thing that's really important is you need to have a plastic bucket. Now, most all plastic buckets are pretty common now. But when I was a kid, what was our buckets? Metal. And even more than that, they were galvanized, weren't they? What's the component of galvanization? Zinc. That's going to show up right in our sample. So we want to just get a plastic bucket. Again, we're going to rinse that bucket out and make sure it's clean. Then if you look and see, let's see what amount of tools I'm supposed to have. All right. If you will look, and I got a picture of a map, And I think this is one of the things that folks make a mistake in taking the soil sample. I think it should be, what's your number of this page? Okay, so then 10 is what you're looking at. That's just a map. And one of the things that I want to tell you about soil sampling is that you are going to take sub-samples. And you're going to send in a soil sample. So if I have a 10-acre pasture, a 10-acre field, I should, as a rule of thumb, now I'd write this down, these are practical things. As a rule of thumb, you should take somewhere close to 10 sub-samples. If you have a 10-acre field. Now, if you have a 20-acre field, you could probably get by with a dozen or 15. So don't just correspond it absolutely to the acre. But it's also very important that you see this picture that they cut out. They did not sample in the eroded spot, did they? And they did not sample in the low spot. So they wanted to take those subsamples from the uniform productivity of the field. And that's really important. If you've got a field that's got some bottom ground and some up ground, I'd be taking 2 samples. Don't mix those together if they're of volume enough to deal with. If you're going to spread the fertilizers separately, or you would or could, then take them separately. Because you don't really want to mix those. You don't want the average. You want to know what those 2 soil types are giving you in your field, because they will be distinctly different soil types. All right, so I'm going to take those subsamples. I'm going to make a little map. Now, I don't imagine most of you are going to make a visual map, but again, we're talking about teaching this to a sophomore. But we'll make a mental map. We'll go out in that field and we'll scrape that away. And we may have a probe, we may have a shovel, and we're going to take about a 1-inch square, about 6 inches deep, and that's a subsample. And we're going to put that in the bucket. And then we're going to walk to the next spot. We're going to do that. We're going to put that in the bucket. And if we've got that 8 or 10 acre field, then we're going to have 8 or 10 of those 1-inch ribbons in that bucket. And then we're going back to the barn. And if it's wet, you're going to just let it sit and dry a little bit, maybe a day or 2. Then you're going to hurt a thing. If it's ready, dry, crumbly, then you're going to crumble it all up, stir it up, mix it up real good, and then pull out a double handful. Pull out a Ziploc lunch sandwich bag full, and that's plenty enough for your sample. You want to identify the field, the year that you take it, and then you're going to send it off. All right? Where would you send it off? Yep, your fertilizer plant, MFA typically, and other fertilizer plants contract with typically with the university lab or the private lab, and they'll do that as a service to you. Also, then I put in here on page, I believe the year 15, probably year 15 and 16. Is that right? Okay. That's a forage laboratory that your fertilizer plant probably is going to send them there also. It's down in southwest Missouri. And you can see on there what the cost is. What is the cost for soil sample? $17. Okay.
I wish that place got done. Yeah. It was like 6
So you can see there's a list. 17 is a pretty inclusive list. We'll talk about here in a second about which ones you need. So what I've done then is just go down that list of steps, 1 through 8 or 9, for you to take a soil sample. Now, why am I after you take a soil sample in a hay seminar?
In the ground is what goes through the ground, or your grass today, and that's what you're counting.
That's right. There's all kinds of research that tells us that we have the correct amount of nutrients in the soils, then our grass is gonna be better nutritious as well. It's also gonna be more productive, we know that. But also the correct nutrients are gonna be there and it's gonna translate. Hay, soil that's been fertilized correctly with nitrogen will absolutely have a higher protein percentage than hay that has not been properly fertilized with nitrogen. Because we know that nitrogen mixed with carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen makes protein. So that's just an absolute given right there. So, in our soil sampling, we said, who can take a sample? Any of us, right? Then why do we need to sample? Well, I'm gonna tell you it's our foundation. I'm gonna tell you it's our base. Again, if we're gonna measure anything, we've got to have a starting place. And I think that's a good starting place for us. Where should we sample? Well, we should make a map. We should identify areas in our fields to sample. We gotta know how many we should take. And then how often should we do it? Got a speculation? 2 years is excellent. 3 years is fine. Your recommendations, we're gonna learn, are 5-year buildup. So somewhere, ideally, 3 to 5. Now, if you're in a build-up ratio, you're gonna come up quicker than that. If you're in a maintenance ratio, that 3 to 5. And what I would recommend is don't do them all every 3 years or every 5 years. Don't just make it a daunting task. Do a third of them, and a third of them. You're doing a little bit every year and moving up that way. That's what I might recommend. We know the tools we need. We know the steps we need. And those are on pages 8, 9, and 10. And then what am I going to do with that sample? Well, I'm going to build that foundation, and then we're going to move that to our next discussion here in just a second. Okay? You good with that? Are you good with the process of what we're doing? I'm kind of moving it through because I want to get to hay, but I think it's important that we touch on that. Probably you knew that. Then our next bullet on our soils lesson says soil nutrients. Okay? Then I believe the best thing we can do would be to find. So you can see page 11 and 12. And my students, about all the years that I taught, and probably all the years that I taught, were much better oral learners than they were written learners. And so I've included the written information on, I believe it will be your page 12. And then I've also shown you this one, which is a sample of the soil report. And we're just going to talk through this one just for a minute. What soil nutrients are we concerned with? 3 big ones, what are they? Well, I'll give you a clue. When you wrote the check for 1717, what in the world was that? What were those 3 17s? What? Okay, the first one always is N. All right, that's the element. What does N stand for? What word?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen, good. Okay, so the first one in any fertilizer analysis is nitrogen. So if it's 1717, your product has 17% nitrogen, pure, as pure as we can get. Then N, and he said the second one was P.
Phosphorus.
All right, phosphorus. Now, I will tell you something, and I'd recommend you make a note of this if you don't know it. You won't see on any report phosphorus in its pure form. Because phosphorus, well, we shouldn't handle it in its pure form. It is in a more stable state as P2O5, and that's phosphate or phosphorus. So just clarification, your source for P is phosphate, okay? P2O5. So N is our first one, 17%. If we're buying 1717, then we have 17% phosphorus, right? What's our third one? What's the element? N, P, and K. does K stand for? Potassium. Again, we don't buy potassium in its pure form. We buy a mineral called what? Red when you go to fertilizer. Potash, okay? Potash is an incomplete or a non-pure source of potassium. So we're gonna buy nitrogen, phosphorus, or phosphate, and potash to represent those N, P, and K. And if you're purchasing 1717, what have you bought? 17% N? Finish me out. 17% P, and what else?
17% potash.
17% K. So then what if you bought a 30, 10, 20? What was the 30? And nitrogen. What was the 10? Okay. What was the 20? You see what I'm trying to show you, teach you? That the numbers are always in that order, N, P, and K. Yes, sir.
Put the rest of that in there if you only got 17.
Good question, good question. It's, the right answer is it's inert material, meaning that it's non-consequential. And the easiest way to say it is in the potash, it's the other rock, the other mineral that came out of the ground. It's not pure, okay? So it's only 17%. And it's actually 60 if you bought pure potash. If you look in your fertilizer place, you go to the potash bin, what does it say? Who knows? 60. 60. So potash in its fertility form is 60% pure. You get what? Okay? If you buy ammonia nitrate, it's what? Anybody know? 34. Okay, 34. All right. And there's another one that'll be 46, right? 18460. That's a product called DAP. You heard of that? That's a fertilizer ingredient that's called DAP. DAP is 18460. So it has 18% nitrogen, 46% P, and 0 potash. So those are the ingredients that they make the cake out of. So much flour, so much sugar, so many eggs, and we get 1717. Does that make sense? Depending on how you blend those, if you buy urea, I believe it's 60 heavy on the nitrogen, right? Okay, that making sense to you? So we want to know about the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potash. What else do you think is important to us on the soil sample? We're not scientists, we're just grass growers, we're just beef farmers. What's important to us? NP and K is for sure. What else is?
Lime.
Lime. What element is represented in lime? Calcium. Okay, calcium. So what we're talking about here is if we were in a chemistry class, we're talking about the macro, big volume, macro ingredients. So we've got N, P, and K, and calcium. Now, Stacy, if you brought me a load of lime, would it be pure calcium?
No.
No, it's like that potash. It's got other stuff in it, right? And the quarry will tell us how concentrated it is. But as a rule of thumb, I'll tell you in a minute, not right this second, I'm going to tell you a rule of thumb that you can kind of go by, what it will be. So what are our 4 ingredients we're talking about now? Which one? N, P, K, and Ca, calcium, right? Okay. Then what's another very important number on a soil sheet that we're interested in? Yes, pH. What does pH have to do with it?
Acidity.
Yes, it either basic or acidity. And we remember from the days gone by that scale goes from 0 on the very acid side to 14 on the very base side. Neutral is where? And that is 7, okay? And we feel that most of the time, our drinking water, and especially your bottled water, will be really close to 7. That's very neutral. It's not either acid or base. We know that grasses will grow better, perform better, use their elements better. I'm talking about a big chemical equation now. One of the ways to inhibit or reduce the efficiency of the chemical equation is to get the pH out of balance. So we can have a pH that's poor, low, or high, and it will affect the N, the P, and the K that we put on. It'll inhibit its use, okay? So pH becomes very important. Where do we want our pH in a hay and pasture situation? 6 to 7. Write that down, rule of thumb. Now that's pretty broad. I can talk to you a lot more in specific crops. If you want alfalfa, you gotta be 6.5 or close to 7. Pure fescue, you can get down to 5.5 or 6. But a take-home message is if you bump it in 6 and 7, you're in good shape. You're gonna get clover growth. The more clover you have, the closer to 7 needs to be. Grasses can take a little more acidity back and forth. Okay, so I want to know N, P, and K, and calcium, and pH. Two other things I want to know. I want you to write these down. I want you to write down CEC. Cation exchange. Coefficient. Really, really important for you to know, and I'll tell you why in a second. Then the other thing I want you to write down is OG, organic matter. Now, absolutely, the more organic matter that you can have showing up in your soil sample, the healthier your soil is going to be. That's where your critters live. That's where your worms and your bugs and your bacteria and all the things that keep that soil alive and growing and decaying. That's all happening in the organic matter level. And the higher the better. 3 is really good, 3%. And your soil sample is going to tell you that. I think my paperwork will tell you that too. So, if we think about those things, let's look at this soil test sheet right here, and then let's find it. Let's find it. If you will look at the letter B, right underneath that, the first category is what? pH. What is this pH? Is that good or bad? Where did I tell you we need to be? 6 and 7. So we like 4.9? No, we don't. No, we don't. How can we change that? Remember our scale. 0 to 7 is acid. 7 to 14 is base. So if we're showing an acid type soil, right, below 7, how do we change it? We add what? Yeah, you jumped ahead of me. Yeah, we do add lime, but we add a base, don't we? In our chemical words, we add a base to balance that out. It's like a fulcrum. You with me? So right now I'm heavy on the acid side, so I got to put a base. Now what's my base? Okay. Yes, the base is lime and calcium is the ingredient. And so I'm going to add a base, and the one that's the most readily available to us and most inexpensive is to add calcium. Okay? So I'm going to add calcium to my soil to increase the pH up to between, what's my numbers? 6 and 7. Okay? You say, okay, well, how much do I do? How much do I put on? Okay, go to letter H. Make yourself a note right there, and it's already there, but you make yourself a written note. E, capital E, and M. Effective neutralizing material. Hear that word. What do? We add an acid, and what do we want to do? Take it to neutral, right? So effective neutralizing material. What is that? It's lime. Now see that number right there. That number, 1,395. Now I'm not going to get you deep into math tonight, but I'm going to give you a rule of thumb to live by so that you can estimate. You can guesstimate. You can go a figure, okay? So 1,395, it tells us that we need 1,395 units of effective neutralizing material to get that soil up to 7. That's a mouthful, isn't it? We need 1,395 effective neutralizing units to get it from 4.9 up towards 7. We know that most of the time, now I'm gonna get out on the limb here, most of the time, our lime is close to 400. Do you agree? A ton of lime that we get out of the ground is gonna be somewhere near 400 units per ton. Now, you can go some places and it'll mine 600, you go someplace and mine 350, but I'm not telling you, I wanna tell you a rule of thumb, okay? I wanna tell you something to estimate by. So if I can get 400 out of a ton, how many ton do I need to put on, Terry?
This deal here,
Yeah,
I need to put three something.
3 something, that's good enough, isn't it? That's good enough, because we can go to an expert and they can tell us exactly how much to put on. But that's good enough for me, isn't it? I know that when I'm doing my thinking, I need to put about 3.5 ton of lime on here. Does everybody understand how I got that number? So write it down there that E&M, most of the time, is 400 per ton. John, is that always a never? No, but it's a rule of thumb for us, okay? It's a piece I can put in my pocket and know that I'm gonna be in the ballpark. It might be 3 or it might be 4, but I'm 3 something is good enough for me to figure. Question? Yes?
If you had a problem and you were over 7, say you're like 11, 12, what do you put on that to make it go back down?
Well, it hardly never happens here.
But
it's a question.
I'm just throwing this at him.
You can add nitrogen-based products, because that'll be acid, and you can bring it down that way, or you can shock the soil. But most of the time, if you had a base, and I don't know if you really know this, but bases are way, way, way more caustic than acids are. So if you had a base soil of 11 or 12, you probably wouldn't have anything to grow.
Does that happen anywhere around here?
I don't know where in the world it happens. Anybody know? I think it's in the
Mars,
really,
I think Mars is it.
in the really arid, desolate areas where it's,
areas where there's, like heavy metal.
that are gonna find that and create, that are gonna create those problems. But you're not gonna have anything growing. I don't know that you get much to grow above 8. So most people think acids are the most dangerous, actually bases are by far more dangerous. Yes, sir.
What about the coarseness of the lime? I bought a bunch of lime several years ago off of the Mississippi River, and that stuff was just like flour. And when you spread it, that stuff would hang in the air like a cloud. I've never seen anything like that. But I know it dissolve faster, but how big a deal is that the faster dissolve or slower? Some of the lime is coarse, and some is just like this. This stuff just like flour.
It's a good question, and it's a rock, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lime is a rock, and the finer the rock, the quicker it's gonna go into solution. And think about your soil, it's just like a solution, it's got water and soil, so the finer it is, the faster it's going to neutralize your soil. Now, if you're having a situation where you're using up your lime, if you're using it up, then you're gonna run out quicker. So there is a case then for using coarser lime, but it's gonna be slower to get into solution. And typically, we want that quicker response. So the finer the lime, then it's usually the better to rectify our problem. As a maintenance, the coarser lime might be better.
What caused it to be so much difference? I mean, that lime out there tested 7, almost 800 out there off that Mississippi. Why is lime so variable in the test?
It's because of the water, though it is separated the calcium from the granular rock, and the weight of it, the rocks have actually dropped, and the calcium was lighter and moved on and concentrated more. So when we get it out of the ground, it's just out of the ground and it's not been solutioned or not been refined at all. Okay, so you have a grasp of how to use the E&M. I want you to look up to CEC. It's right above H. And write this right on that paper. CEC times 5 is the maximum nitrogen that you should ever put on. CEC times 5. This is another really figure. CEC times 5 is the maximum nitrogen that you should ever put on a particular soil. Now I'm gonna tell you what CEC is. CEC is cation exchange. All I'm talking about, cations are these molecules that are floating around that soil. And if they can exchange quickly, then they can handle heavy fertility. You with me? So if you, this one is 12, I think. Yeah, and I'm not worried about the decimal. So how much nitrogen could I put on this field? 60 pounds to the acre, right? 12 times 5 would give me 60. So if you came in with a recommendation, you want to put 40 pounds of nitrogen on here, you'd be in good shape. If you said you wanted to plow this for 40, put 80 pounds, you shouldn't do that because you're going to waste it. You cannot handle that much nitrogen. So just kind of file that back away from that. Organic matter. Where's our OG? There it is, above D. You see that? 2.2%. 2% is pretty good. 3 is a bunch better. You get above 3, you're really, really high quality, healthy soil. The more you hay a soil, the more your organic matter is going to go down because you're taking organic matter away. So the more all your pastures are going to be typically higher in organic matter because you're leaving things on there. You've got some wasted forage and so on and so forth. Now, your pastures that in the wintertime, you graze down too tight, what's happened to your organic matter? It's leaving. It's leaving by wind, by water. It's gone. So that's another reason. You've all seen pastures that today, this week, pastures that you haven't grazed very hard and they've got a good stand of brown grass. What are they? Green, aren't they? Why is that? Because that organic matter is kicking in. That soil is getting warmed up and that's getting really healthy and starting to grow. Okay? Another thing I want to tell you, rule of thumb, we're going to get off this soil, is we are going to typically start growing grass in our country when we have had the 4th, and write this down, when we've had the 4th 50-degree night in a row. And we're going to have 2 this week. I heard, who's our radio guy? I heard him say, we're going to bump 50, I think, tonight and tomorrow night. So we're going to get 2 50s in a row. We see grass green and milky. But when we finish the 4th 50-degree night in a row, and that tells us our soil temperature is warmed up into the upper 40s, and cool season grass is going to rock and roll and start to grow. And so shortly after that is when we should be able to think about turning out on grass. It's going to grow. A lot of people are going to make the mistake and turn out too early, aren't they? It's going to bump up there and grow, and then it's going to go down. You're going to have a difficult time with your cattle are not going to want to come back to hay, and you can get in a real deficient situation here in the next 30 days. Your cattle can lose weight that you worked hard to maintain all winter. Okay? Now, the next thing back over on my lesson was soil analysis. I think we talked about that. Oh, one more thing. Down there at the bottom, you see where it says cropping options. That's E. So if you wanted to, and this was just an example, if you wanted to have clover, no, I don't want to use that. Use alfalfa grass. So if you had an alfalfa grass field growing in your pasture, what should you apply? 20 pounds of what? Yeah, 55 pounds of phosphorus. And this soil needs no potash. And here's where I'm going to step on somebody's toes, and I want to. So many of my friends and neighbors will say, I'm going to fertilize that field, I'm going to go get 250 pounds per 17. Is that a good idea? No. Why is it a good idea?
Because we're spending money on potash, but.
Yeah, you bought 34% potash that you absolutely didn't need. And actually, what will it do? We learned. It'll tie up your other ingredients so they're less. So you not only poured your money out on the ground, you hurt yourself, haven't you? Also, you put 34 pounds of N on, didn't you? How much did you need? 20. So don't do that. Don't go up there and do that anymore. Take a soil sample, and that's why I'm harping on it. Take a soil sample, know what you need. And then just go up there and tell them that's what I want. Because it's just as easy for them to blend precisely what you want as it is 1717 or 313 or 411. And sometimes those are right. But you don't have to do that. Blend what you need relative to your soil sample. Okay?
Tom, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Before you leave this, for some I've never been able to learn any of my fertilizer plants, how long will the nitrates stay with you? Can I, you know, like, and put them on early? Do you lose the I know that they yes, there's difference in urea,
Yes,
just the
they're
nitrate.
very different. Ammonia nitrate is the one we use can use commonly. There's some sulfur nitrates and those, but ammonia nitrate has a reasonable shelf life, 60 to 75 days. And that's the longest one. So his question is how long is that nitrogen going to stay there in the soil for your plants to use it? Ammonia nitrate will stay with us about 60 to 75 days. Okay? Now, then the next one is, what's the new?
Urea or that,
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about urea last. There's a treated urea. There's a state agritane or that's a trade name, but there's a urea product, and urea, let me just go ahead and talk about urea. Ammonia nitrate's over here on the stable side. Okay? Ammonia nitrate is the old hound that's there every day when you come home. Urea is the wild dog. Run like a deer, fast, rock and roll, but about 3 days out of the week, Lewis, he's gone. Urea is very unstable. Does that mean we don't ever want to use it? No. You just need to figure it out. Urea has the history of being gone as quick as 14 days. Now, Terry, careful. I didn't say it was always gone 14 days. As quick as 14 days.
what average would be, Tom?
Looking at 30, 35 days.
I was gonna say probably gonna be 14 to 30. And it's gonna depend on some weather issues, and this will kind of fool you. Believe it or not. And you're gonna see me get on the soapbox because I'm not a fan of urea
Oh,
products.
if you could predict the weather for me, I would really.
But weather is second. Stop that. Weather is not the one that causes urea to leave.
No.
Hear me. It is not. Believe this or not. The more vegetation you have on your soil, the faster urea will volatilize. Contrary to what you think, isn't it? You put urea on a hayfield that you've taken care of all winter and got a good soil or got a good mass of 14 days, it's gone. So be careful. When should you use urea? When you're fertilizing very late. Right? When you're fertilizing on bare ground. Urea will have its longest shelf life on bare ground. Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Isn't that an organic matter? all the
It
time?
does, and it's the moisture and the matting that
That
causes
breaks
it
it
to go. Okay? So question there, that's a good question. So then there's ones in between that have more stability. You already figure out where I'm at. I am a fall fertilizer. I do 80% of my fertilizing in the fall on my hay fields. I am ammonium nitrate diluent. Because I want to predict that longevity, okay? Now, I'm not going to tell you not to use the others. I'm going to tell you to learn and know about it before you do. Use those tools accordingly.
Hey, Tom, question, you go back to the organic,
Yes.
I just put a bunch of organic stuff on my garden today.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't cheap. So what do you do in a field that you have that you really don't have much organic,
Let it rest. That's a good question.
Rest?
Forage rest.
like a year or something?
A season. Rest from fall around to spring. you know, don't graze it down in the winter. Use it as a pasture, clip it, graze it, get on, get off. That's what rotational grazing is really, really known for, is building up organic matter. 2 reasons. We're gonna graze that off with cattle. We're gonna poop that organic matter right back in its place. Small paddocks, that's how that works. That's why that works. And so we're gonna increase because we're keeping that organic matter there. In normal situations where we don't rotational graze, our cattle, now listen to me, our cattle go over here and graze. And then they go over here to the shade and what? Take a crap. So where do we take our organic matter? We brought it over here in the shade where it can't grow. Right? Absolutely. We transferred that nutrient from over there to over here. One of the reasons that rotational grazing works is they're in a small box. And they have got to poop all around here, don't they? We don't give them a place to go away and poop. Because remember, and this is kind of the end of my presentation, but it's going to fit right now. When we fertilize, put NP and K on it, and a cow eats it, or we bale it and feed it, folks, those nutrients don't disappear. We don't lose any of them except nitrogen. The P and the K and the calcium and the organic matter it just goes through there, it works, it comes right out. It's not gone. They don't use it up. They don't use it up at all, except for nitrogen. Now, I said nitrogen, right? Where does nitrogen leave? How do you know it's leaving? Right here. Well, in your smell.
Yeah.
You can smell nitrogen. I just told you that already, because what's urea made of? Nitrogen, right? I told you that urea was very volatile, didn't it? So if I've got nitrogen sources in urea, in urine, get the word urine, urea, hear it, okay? That's nitrogen. So it's on the ground, 2 weeks, where is it? Gone. So we lose nitrogen to the atmosphere, but we also get a little back. Old timers would tell us, hey, we had a snowstorm, we got some nitrogen back. Is that true?
Yep.
Sure it is. It's a very low percentage, but we did get some back. We breathe about 20-some% nitrogen. It's in our air.
I'd say you're really a big believer in harrowing your fields out, get that manure scattered out. Are you a big proponent of that? Or
I've done it, you know, and I think it's beneficial. I'm not religious about doing it, but I am religious about moving.
Rotation.
And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I want to get on the soapbox. We talk about rotational grazing. We ought to be talking about rotational feeding.
Yeah.
You know, we ought to be hay feeding in a rotational pattern, just the same way that we rotational graze. Why is that? Because I'm feeding them that nutrient. Where do we? I grew up in Dent County, and we fed on the ridges. Why? Because there weren't any mud. Now I live on the prairie. I got wonderful soil. We got mud every day. My pastures are soft today. On the hilltop, the ridge top I've got, my pastures are tracking today. Now that frustrates me until it's growing for a long time. But if I'm not careful, what do? Pick those places where I'm dry, and I continue to what? I continue to feed there because mechanically I have to, right? But I'm smart enough to know where in the world is my nutrients. Right there. Yes.
If you had a place that you really wanted to build up your soil, wouldn't feeding in that area specifically be for that, to build it up?
Yes, yes.
I mean, more so than.
Yes, and you know the programs where we take the multiple samples and get the images of you can absolutely adjust your feeding and benefit your soil that way. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Now, I think I opened up too big a can of worms, but I think soil is very, very important. Let's move on, and you've got information. I'll be glad to talk to you anytime you want to. I think we better move on to our. I want you to look at your page 14. We're going to go to it and come back. Look at page 14 while I'm going to hay. Look there at cool season grass. What is this chart? I took a picture with my phone. I keep this one thumbtacked to the bulletin board in my shop. That's where this picture came from, off my shop wall today. What does it say? Cool season grass Nitrogen, 45, you find it? For every ton of hay that Jody gets from me in the summertime, I am sending her 45 pounds of N. So you need to pay me for fertilizer and That's an old joke. Harold Martin told me that years ago. I bought hay from him. He said, "Now, son, you can pay for the hay and the fertilizer." Anyway, so 45 pounds of N per ton. Now, I took it off. Didn't I? I put it on, grew the grass, and took it off. Not really rocket science, but we don't really think about it, do we? So I took 45 pounds of N off every ton. How much phosphorus did it take off? 12 pounds. How much potash? 50. What in the world would 777 do for you there? You know, remember one time years ago, Chad, I was in this class and a bunch of, how many of us on our hay fields put 777? Forever. We do, don't we? Quit it. Let's quit it. Let's figure out what we need. If you bailed off 2 tons of hay, it's right there what you need to put back. Because you're just mining your soil. If you're taking it off, what's going to happen? Have you not seen that in your career? That you hate that field, and I don't know what happened. I put 777 on every year, and I've been haying it for 2 years, and I don't get very much hay anymore. Well, I need to reseed it. You heard that? Well, I have, and then Bill Lang comes up, I just want to get in the soapbox, and I just want to say, hey, look here, this is on my shop wall. Removal rates are very, very important. Very important. Okay. Keep that one handy, put it on your shop wall. Hay and forage sampling, that's what we came here to do. We're gonna go through the same things. Do you think it's important to sample your hay? I do. For the same reason on the soil. So we know what's in there. Because I put it in the soil to get it in the hay. Now what am I gonna do with my cattle? To sell some calves and make some money, right? I'm making that circle. We're gonna address that circle. So a hay sample is very important, so we know. Again, we can't manage what we can't measure. Well, guess what? Who do you think can sample? To take an expert? Not really. We're just getting ready to go, man. Do that. Yep. We're gonna go do it in just a second. We're gonna take a sample. What does it take? Well, it takes a tool that FCNB has purchased, and they're going to keep it here, and you can check it out. We're appreciative of them to do that. And I told Matt, I said, here's what I think. People are going to check it out 2 or 3 times and tell Scott they just want to own one themselves.
A really good drill, too.
You got to have a cordless drill.
Tom, I'm not sure that was approved at our budget.
We're gonna talk about it Thursday.
Well, then I should say Matt has been nice enough to buy this tool for us.
You hug him, Tom, you hug him.
Oh, shoot. Anyway, so we're gonna use that here in just a second. It doesn't take very much expertise to take a hay sample. Well, how should you do it? I'll tell you how we do it at our house. We, Taylor String, how many soil samples have I taken? Or hay samples?
Not very many.
Not very many. So
Well.
who do you think takes the samples at my house? They do, okay? In my barn, in our barn, in the center section, we stack 15 bales to a row. We stack on their edge, like a can. And so the rule is, we want to pour out of every row. So every 15 bales, we're randomly, or they are, getting that in here and putting it in a Ziploc bag as we put it in the barn. That's how we do it. You can sample them in the field. I'm going to tell you kind of the pitfall of sampling in the field is you're probably lazy, like I should say I. At the end of the day, when it's hot and I'm doing that, I'm probably not going to disperse myself all over that field taking samples. I tend to kind of sample in a spot. As it comes into the barn, it's pretty random. Because who's ever been over in the barn with a tractor loaded here, loaded there, and it's come in and it's stacked in a stack, and then I'm putting it in the barn with the skid steer. So we feel like it's pretty random sample. So at our house, we want a core sample of the same farm of hay or same kind of hay, about 1 core for every 15 bags. And we're gonna collect those as we put them in the barn. Every night, I've got a shop refrigerator. It's gonna go in a Ziploc bag, and we've got one tonight. Ziploc that dude. Actually, I don't close it. I take those core samples, dump them in there, label them with a marker, keep them in the refrigerator. And they'll stay in there for the whole month that we're haying. And they'll stay in there and stay fresh. And Ziploc those things shut down pretty well when we're done haying. We've got about 4 different samples.
It doesn't draw a lot of moisture.
What?
It doesn't draw a lot of moisture.
Your refrigerator is very low moisture. Yeah. Your refrigerator, that's gonna be.
Yeah, I've done it.
That doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because in your sample, they're gonna remove the moisture.
Just take moisture out.
Yes, that doesn't matter so much. All right, so who can take a sample? Any of us. We're gonna learn how. I told you how we take care of the sample. Where do I send it? Well, page 15. Same as the soil place. I would be glad to visit with you about which of those samples you think you need. We'll talk about them in a minute. I usually get somewhere like the 18 one, and I have one customer that wants the $27. We might just start with number 1 and number 4. Number 1 is the good, solid sample that you need. Gives you all the information you need. And if you have somebody, and this older gentleman was an old scientist, he wants number 4. And it gives you everything, including the kitchen sink. So that's fine. That's what we do for them.
Just depends how much stuff you like that.
I think we just go take a sample. That sounds good. We'll step out here. Bring that bag.
Yeah, lots of that.
This is, I found this, I've had mine about 4 or 5 years. There's a company in Yankton, South Dakota that makes these. It's a feed company. And it's like about $250, I think. I've had mine 5 years. We've taken lots of samples with it. It's got a cutting tip right here on the end. It is hollow. This coil spring on here helps it start and feed through the valve. This canister will hold about 4 core samples. You stand behind me now, right there. You heard of colonoscopy? I'm a doctor. Anyway, it'll hold about 4 or 5 cores, and then we'll pop it off there and put it in a Ziploc bag. So let's get over here. Oh, all you need to do is go to the center. So on mine, we use 4 by 5 bales, and we're going to core from this end coming into the center. So about 30 inches is as deep as you need to go. Actually, if you go deeper than that, you're doubling up on the hay, aren't you? When you cross center, that's the same hay as you got before you got to center. So we want to go to center and in about 30 inches. So let's. Okay, we just want to come this bale You wanna take this net wrap and just peel it back a little bit. You don't really have to, but it'll kind of get caught up in your throat. Now, I should be going about toward the center. Doesn't matter here, left or right, because that's the same thing with the layers. So I'm going to put it up here. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a push. Oh.
Taylor may do that for you.
Yeah, she should. My girl's taking a bunch of samples. Okay. Come on, girl. Got another one? Remember, I do do this. So keep
Good training, Tom. That'll work.
Yep. All right. So then what we it's got to stick.
Get that off Amazon, man, or what? Buy it off.
Yeah, that. We're taking this fork and we take this stick. And what we're doing then is just cleaning this tube. Then we do that, lay that tube down. Like I said, we can put about 5.
Thank you.
Press these little buttons together, okay? And then Taylor. And we're gonna have Ziploc bags there handy. We use those pretty big ones. You're just gonna pour that in there. And that's it. Now, I'm glad you asked that. Did you hear his question? He said that's been in the barn 40 years. What would you guess? There is no guess, and that's why we understand. I mean, I'd be interested in you. I would say that the land is I would definitely say that it's not but I'd say it does have some nutritional value. It won't be what it once was, but I don't think just because it's been stored high and dry, it's been stored well. I don't think it's gone. But the key thing is that I would tell you without a doubt, and I've done it long enough to know that you can't tell by looking, and you can't tell by looking.
I know it's just not quite right.
So that's the vitamin K, the one that comes in orange and leafy vegetables, that's going to leach out, and that's going to lose the color. So, you know, definitely speculate that vitamins, some of the minerals are going to be more solid, but primarily the vitamins. So it's not like that you have to keep it like we do and do 14 at a time, 15 at a time. But it's a tool that I think that you need to use and employ. So we can go back in and talk about what the rest of it.
You got fields, you got bales here. Oh, each have well, that's a good provision.
We would. Hey, we would.
How lazy is he?
That's all right. Have That's all right. It's a good question. No, you don't need to sample all those.
I mean, even after 15, you know, work.
It'd be a lot of, you know,
Take a lot of drills.
just so that if you took a sample on 10%, you took 40 bales in a sample. If you take 4, that's fine. It's fine. I don't care what you take. Like I would say to you, if I'm going to do the work, I want an accurate result. And I'm not just going to take work. You might get just as accurate as me. But I'm going to tell you, if you've got a field that holds 40 bales a day, especially in this country, then you may go to a place where they're all identical. Quality of the hay in the soil and in the product. And so then I want a little better analysis of what I've got. Because I'm going to feed them one after the other. Okay?
I'm sure he's real back.
Survitec loves for. I said Survitec loves for. I mean, I tested a 3-year-old Mexican one, it's still held pretty good. Pretty strong.
Wow. Excuse me. Oh, 45 times. Same on me.
Okay. Look over to your page. Your page 17, I believe. This is a handout that I made up that is going to tell you kind of the basic skinny of what I think you need to get off of your hay sample. And I'm not going to go over those with you. I would encourage you to look first at crude protein. Because typically when we talk about feedstuffs, we talk about balancing rations, we talk about quality, using that word quality, we're talking about protein. Protein is very important. We have learned a long, long time ago, Colin is very versed in nutrition, much ahead of me, and we learned a long time ago that if we balance for protein, the rest of the ingredients will pretty well take care of themselves in a ruminant animal. Now maybe not so in a pig or a chicken or us, but the ruminant animal can take care of if we can balance for protein. We're in pretty good shape. So look there at your quick rule of thumb, and I hope you'll go home and read this better and think about it. One of the ways that we can address how good that hay is, we can look here, that if it's 8 to 14% grass hay, then that is going to be a pretty decent, pretty darn good grass hay. Then look over 16, 17, 18, I think it'll be year 19. This one looks like this. Again, a chart that I've stolen from somewhere, that a rule of thumb. Go down there to grass hay, look at your crude protein. You're in the good category, you can get from 10 to 11%. We have built lots and lots of hay at our place and tested lots and lots of hay, and we rarely get above 11. Rarely. We're really happy when we can get to 10. A lot of times we're at that 9 and change, and we think we're building pretty good hay, good quality hay. Now then, we will get all right on the TDN. That's the next column. What's TDN? Total digestible nutrients. That's all of it in a ball. That's the final skinny. Pretty important. So as we look at quality in the hay, we want to know what the TDN number is. You've got a chart to look at it. We want to know what the crude protein is. You've got a chart. We have to know what the moisture is, and we're concerned about the pH as well in nutrition also. Okay? So look at your 20. It's just another chart that shows you just a little bit more information. And we're going to talk a little bit about ADF and NDF. ADF is acid detergent fiber. NDF is non-digestible or neutral detergent fiber. And those, what I want to tell you though is those two numbers are dealing with the cellulose that's in your hay sample. Of course, your hay is all cellulose. Little blades of grass are highly digestible. Stalk and stem is not digestible. One of the things I used to tell my students, these boots that I've got on, leather, about 17 or 18% protein. Pretty darn good, isn't it? These leather boots are about 17 or 18% protein. I just told you have really good hay if it's 11. Well, what's the problem there? What's the word? You want me just to slice those up and put them on your plate in the morning?
Right there.
That's right. It's almost non-digestible. Yes. And that's part of why it's non-digestible, because mechanically it'd be really hard to chew. It'd be really, now, if I shredded and ground that and put it in solution, you could get some more out of it, couldn't you? So protein is not the only thing we have to think about. Protein is important, granted, but we also have to think about its digestibility. So we can have a really good high amount of protein, but it's poor quality. Hear the word? It has the volume, but it's poor quality. It's not digestible. Okay? So then turn to page, let's see, I think that you're 21. There's 4 or 5 of them. What are those? Michael, you recognize your name on those. Well, I guess there's 5. What are they?
Hay sample.
Hay samples, okay? Hay samples for last year from my house, from 3 farms, and 1 from silage from Perkins. And then if you look at the one that, this one, it has multiple samples from another year, same farm. That's one of the things I want to talk to you about tonight is that the reason Terry couldn't get me to predict or commit is you can see right here from my data, same farm, same fertility measures, different results. Okay? So what did I tell you we need to get from here? We have to know the moisture. Because if we're going to compare ingredients, we have to compare dry matter to dry matter. We have to do that. You can't compare a hay sample that has 15% moisture with one that has 10. They both have to be dry, and then we're comparing apples to apples. Okay? So moisture, we want to know protein. And if you're going to talk to me or talk to somebody about digestion and comparison, just always go to the dry. So on the 72 farm, cool season grass, that's what CSG stands for. How wet was my hay? What was the moisture content of my hay? 12.6%. Yep, 12.6%. Hay stores very well below 15. Above 15, you're going to have some issues. So if you're below 15, it's going to store very well. So what was my protein percentage on the dry matter basis?
8.1.
8.1. Now there's adjusted, those aren't, if you're a scientist or you're more into this, those are things that you can use. But I'm going to tell you the ones that I want you to look at tonight. So I want you to look at protein. I want you to look at TDN. Go all the way down to TDN. What's the TDN here? 53, right? That means that's 53% digestible. If you go back to your chart, I think you'll find that pretty acceptable. always like to get our TDNs in the high 50s. Question was asked in the break about nitrogen. A couple of years ago, we had some nitrogen toxicity problems. If you look down there, where you have a raw number of nitrogen, there's a number, and I don't think you want to know it, but you can multiply that times 6.25 and come up with your protein percentage. If that number was high, then it would have free nitrogen, and that can cause you some issues in feeding cattle from nitrogen toxicity. If you were going to look at that. Now, the rest of these are macro and micronutrients. And I'm going to, this glaze over because I don't think that's what we're here for. I want you to come down to RFV. RFV, relative feed value. This has a 78. 1 pound of corn, 1 pound of number 2 shelled yellow corn would have a number of 100. And it's just an index number, and it's telling you that this hay will feed 78% of 1 pound of corn nutrition. Does that make sense? It's just a comparison. So if you were buying hay that had RFV of 78 and one that had RFV of 90, and the price was the same, you choose the 90. Because all of its factors, it's going to be more nutritious. Okay? So I think RFV is a pretty good number. You get into some of the premium alfalfa numbers, and you're going to get up close to 200. So a pound of alfalfa hay like that will feed twice as good as a pound of corn. Just a number or a thought that you can use. So you're going to get this in your sample. We look over here and look at the silage. Take a look at it. Some of you are doing baleage and silage. What do you think about your moisture? It's going to be way up higher, isn't it? What about your protein? Why is protein higher on baleage or silage than dry hay? When you baled it, it was in more premium condition. Also, the process of ensiling is going to open up some of those proteins for you. So typically, it's going to be higher in protein. It's going to be higher in moisture. TDN, about the same as our hay, a little bit, it wasn't. The silage process breaks down some of the cellulose fibers and makes that more digestible. Now, I give you those hay samples, really more just to look at. And if you'll turn over to the one that says custom laboratories, it's kind of like this. It's from 2017, the same field as the singles that I gave in 2020. And you can see my hay off the same farm, same fertility measures, was different. Why would that be true? Is it just what I can grow that puts quality in my barn? And if I bale it too wet, I'm going to have quality issues, right? If I wait too long to bale it, I'm going to. So part of that quality of hay is on me, isn't it?
It's even when you cut it.
And when I cut it, right. That's right.
How far along it is, like clover or alfalfa. Alfalfa should be like 1/10.
Bloom, yes. Yeah.
If you lose it every day after that, it goes down. I forgot how many percentage.
Significantly, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
And you know, actually, grass hays are the same.
Right.
We just don't really notice grass hays blooming. And we know that the dilemma, and I want to stop and talk about this, dilemma is the quality versus quantity. What is the most nutritious, high protein, highly digestible fescue that you can do? Your yard. Your yard. No bloom. All what? Leaf. All leaf. All leaf. So from that stage, from the 6-inch stage, all the way to the seed head, what happens to its quality? What happens to its quantity? So the more quantity, the less quality. And really where we want to harvest the hay is where those two lines what? Meet intersect. And typically for here, we cannot get grass hay in the barn without ruining it where those lines meet. When is that? About the 25th of May. We just physically have a very difficult time getting it in the barn, dry hay. Silage people, you can do that. So when are we typically, our early cutters, when are they gonna get in the field? Probably June 1 or that Memorial Day, right? That's pretty darn good hay, pretty high quality. It won't be as many bales, but it may feed like that many. So from that day on, then it gets a real significant deterrent. Now, some of us over the years have combined and cut that second cut after it's been combined. What about your quality there? Very poor. Unless you have some clover that's coming back in it, or you have another species coming. But the fescue that's after combine has long been matured, and its quality is pretty low. Not saying that you don't do that, but if you don't sample, you don't know. You don't sample, you don't know. You don't measure, you can't manage. Now, turn then, and I know we've been here too long. It's the pitfalls of being a teacher. The longer you teach, the longer it takes to teach. Turn to page 26. This will kind of get to the last piece of it. I put there a sheet of paper for you that tells you some information that you need to know. A big cow will eat about 2.5% of her body weight every day. Now, folks, she won't eat any more than that. So, back when I was in college, we did this research project on a bunch of Angus cows, and we fed them. We ground up cardboard boxes from the grocery store. College students, we went there and ground them up and mixed them with molasses. Now, were they nutritious? If you did the sample on them, they were, until what number didn't fit? TDN. Did they have protein? Yep. Did they have fiber? Yep. Did they have cellulose? Yes. What about the TDN? Way down because they couldn't digest it like my boots. So we fed that to those cows. Did they eat it? Yeah, they did. What did they look like? Full. They were full. What happened to them in about 45 days of the research project? Some of them died. The rest of them were emaciated. Why? They were full. They had all they wanted. I promise you, we didn't short them on anything. Any volume. They ate 2.5% of their body weight every day. But nutritionally, it was void. They weren't getting anything from it, or they weren't getting enough from it. Can that happen at our house? Yeah. It sure can. So, the key to that is, we know, and you can look there by the math, you have a 1,200 pound cow, that's our average cow, at 2.5% of her body weight. How much was she eating today? 30 pounds. 30 pounds. Well, does that mean she'll eat 30 pounds of hay and 5 pounds of range cubes? Is that right? No. No. If you feed her 5 pounds of range cubes, what's she going to do with the hay? Pack it up, right? Okay? So just remember that. That's all she's going to eat. If you fill her up with cardboard boxes, she's full, right? But she really didn't get any nutrition, okay? So look that through. If you look down there a little bit further, that 1,200 pound cow, in the first stage of pregnancy, she needs pure protein of 1.6 pounds a day. That's pure, 100%. You can't buy that. Soybean meal is 40 or 45. So we're doing this math here. Now go on down there. If we take my hay, sample number 1, how much will she eat? At the Hass place, you see that? You with me? I know your butt's tired. 30 pounds is what she'll eat. What was the protein percent of that hay? We can go back over here on the paper and we can find it, can't we? And it was 10.9. What was the TDN? 56. And so we do that math. And how many pounds of protein does she get out of that 30 pounds of hay? 1.83. So what will that hay do with no supplementation? That's all she needs, folks. She doesn't need any distiller, she doesn't need any range cube, doesn't need any crystalline stuff, she doesn't need anything. If she eats that hay, and I provide her with 30 pounds of it enough in the first, the second, and the third of pregnancy. Now, what happens when she has a calf? Look what happens to her protein needs. Goes up. Well, I'm in trouble if all I got's the hay, right? What should I have when she calves? Go on down. I'm a fall calver, going down to October pasture. What should I have when she starts to calve? I should have grass for her, right? What's the protein percentage? We just talked about it in my grass. High, right? We've tested fescue in the yard stage up in the 20s, like alfalfa. Easy for it to be in the 15s and 16s. They tell us that stockpile, still today, March, will be 10 or 11. That's better than that hay I just tested, right? That's why fall calving cows fit in this country, folks. If you have the forage for them, they match to this country. That's why our area, from when I was a kid till now, we see all kinds of the paradigms shifting to fall calvers, because fall calving nutritionally matches our fall season. You see that? Think about that, because that's why that's true. We found it by accident. That's why that's true. So if I got her on 30 pounds of cool season grass pasture, and it's 15% protein, we just said it could be 20, right? If it's only 15, and then what about the digestibility of that grass? Good, isn't it? What does she get out of that? 2.9, is that enough to support her in her, you bet. Now, why do I stand up here and talk to you? Why am I anxious to tell you this? Because if you measure your soil and you measure your hay, and folks, it ain't hard, is it? And we can send it down there to Forage Lab, we can send it to university, and I'll help you read it. I gave you the paperwork to figure it out. You don't have to know all those numbers, you gotta know about 6. Really on the hay sampling, you know 2, 3, moisture, protein, and TDN. You can know what you need to feed. Don't go out there and feed because you did that last year. Or feed absolutely because this year your hay won't support it. Don't crawl up on that old Kurt River log and fall off this summer, the same reason you did last summer, just because it's slick and you crawled up there. That ain't the reason, is it? So know what you're doing and use these 2 or 3 tools to figure out where you are. Yes, sir.
You know, I think something else I didn't really go my eyes up to. I keep a lot of heifers. I went from 7th grade, breed, and my fall calving heifers when I kept moving record, about 10, 12, 14% higher on my fall calving heifers than what my spring calving heifers. So I right this proves it right there.
Because it matches the season. Yeah. It matches the season. You roll that around, Terry, in spring, you're doing it in your head. And right now, we have a terrible nutritional deficiency. This is probably as hard on our cattle right now as those 2 weeks of zero we had. Because I'll guarantee you, during them 2 weeks of zero, they ate everything you put out there. Are they eating your hay today? Mine aren't. They're picking. I'm rolling it, and they're eating, and then they're out. And are they getting a mouthful? Are they getting a belly full? No. No, they're not. So what are they doing? Nutritionally deficient. Just like the cardboard in the reverse. They're spending their whole day grazing, but they're not getting full. Now, sorry to keep you probably twice as long, but I hope you've got some things from this. I hope that, one more page I wanted to show you, the very last page. This is what we do, and this is another little piece of measuring. And I've done this for about 5 or 6 years. And I think it's really interesting, and I think that it really helps me when I look back and I have hard things to compare. And this is not tough. My baler, probably yours, it'll keep track of that for you, how many bales come off, and then at the end, I just write them down and put them together. And the other thing we do, we have a 8-bale flip trailer. And at least once a day, the girls, at least once a day, somebody goes and weighs 8 bales. And we know, and it'll surprise you. Because there's lots and lots and lots of 1,200-pound bales that weigh 920. And years in it's really dry, Dan, there's lots of 1,200-pound bales that weigh 715. And I'm talking 4x5 bales. And I'm just, you know that, I know that, we all know that. And when you figure it out, then you know. It's not difficult. If you just go for it. Ted, if you just went and weighed one every day, you'd have more information than you have now, right?
Well, history teaches not very good,
It's all right.
It's kind of like a cap, it picked up every day.
That's right. That's right. Comparative analysis, right? Questions? Sorry, keep this on.
How are you weighing?
What?
How are you weighing your hay?
Once a day, we take 8 bales on the flip trailer, send it back. Go across the scales. Yep. Yep. And we're not so scientific, we don't go back and weigh empty. I mean, we're just generalizing. And they'll weigh empty every now and then. Same truck, same girls. Yeah, there's different fuel in there, sometimes there's a toolbox in there, sometimes not. But we're just doing that over 700-800 bales. Other questions? KISS principle in my house, keep it simple, stupid. Man, I went too long. All right. Thank you. It's all right. If I can be of help to anybody, I appreciate it.
I just wanted to tell you something that, you know, we're not telling you something that we don't already do. And, you know, we have, my son's back there, but we're 4 generations farming. And, my dad got in the banking business by accident, so, and I stayed with it. But anyhow, what I want to tell you is that Tom has helped me tremendously. And, we got together about 3 years ago. If I'd stayed healthy, I would have been around a lot longer. But Tom is a great, and today, everybody that runs a business, let me tell you something, it's tough. And farmers, ranchers, or whatever you want to call yourself, we're all in the ag business, just like I am. I'm not in there for the fun, that's for sure. It's a big deal.
We've had enough practice, haven't we?
Exactly. So what I'm telling you is that after I talked with Tom, I saw that, my gosh, my dad told me go spread triple 12 at that time. Now it's triple 17. And you know, those days are over with, folks. If you want to impress your banker, the way to do it is to do information, educated information here, and show you how you can save money instead of, you might not need it, you definitely need nitrogen, but you might not need phosphorus, who knows? You know, and there's a lot of research that goes into that. You should have your fertilizer blended to what you need. That will save you one heck of a lot of money. That's only one area. Testing your bales of hay, unbelievably profitable, because that way you maximize the efficiency of your cow herd. I've gone to wet bales of silage. Tom's helped me a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes on that. It's pretty expensive to get in, but I think we're getting to it now. My farm manager there, Michael Herney, he's learning. He's just like a lot of these young people here. He came through the FFA camp and taught his father and great students. In fact, anybody else a student? There's one back there. Two of them. That's great. But anyhow, I just want to tell you that our bank is highly involved in agriculture business. When you talk to one of our people, this guy here, I talked to him one time and ended up buying 12 cows. So, we all know the business.
He's
I
always.
think in all of our officers, I think there's 6 of them or 7, I can't remember. But the only one that really doesn't have agricultural base is in Eureka. And we don't have much agriculture down here, but every other business or bank that we own has people knowledgeable. And when you go to them, they're here to help you. And we're not doing everything right, that's why I talked to Tom. But Tom, thank you very much. This is quite an honor for you to take the time to come.
And we sure found a home here at this bank, that's for sure.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And again, thank you guys, and ladies, and young ladies. We appreciate your coming out tonight. It's a great crowd. I wasn't expecting, but the 12 people are all dressed up. Thank you.
Just some closing remarks, a couple thank yous. The dinner tonight, which I thought was exceptionally good, was provided by Matt's Steakhouse. So if you guys haven't visited Matt's Steakhouse in a while, I encourage you to do so. Great meals out there. Also, he had to leave. Some of you I know got to talk to him a little bit. Colin Chalk was here. He stood over here most of the time. He's a representative for Souther Feeds, and as Tom referenced him in this presentation, Colin is very, very knowledgeable in what he does, and what he does is a lot of the analytical stuff that Tom just talked about. So Terry Baker had arranged a meeting with us and Colin at Max. What was that, probably 8 or 9 months ago, a year, and now Colin's working with Tom and I believe Scott Gar, and I've got his contact information, so if anybody's interested in visiting with him, he would love to make a house call and come down and visit with you. Also, Terry Baker's here. A lot of you guys know Terry. Terry's a member of our board of directors here at FCNB. Happy to have him there. And thank you for bringing a bale of hay tonight so we can pull the sample. So.
I'm gonna load that on a small truck when you, if I want to see me take that bale bed, set it in his pickup and be worth watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom didn't mention this much, and I know everybody has their own opinion, but I want to make sure, and everybody knows, you know, when you talk about supplements, there's tub supplements, there's commodity supplements, and everybody to each their own on how they do it or run their herd. It obviously makes sense for you, how you do things, but Tom is a distributor for Crystal Licks. You know, do your research on them. And by all means, Tom said he would come and talk to you about your hay analysis, your reports that you get back. I can promise you, there's not a guy more eager and willing to help somebody else understand what's on that paper, because the first time that I and Scott, Paul, Michael, sit in the boardroom and went through one of those reports, it was extremely overwhelming. So as he says, do not hesitate to reach out to Tom, and he will help you. And I can give contact information for him. One last thing, Tom mentioned it, don't have a hay probe, no problem. FCNB was gracious enough to purchase one of those. That probe will be kept in here. If we need to ship it to Steelville for some time for Steelville customers, Cuba, Sullivan customers, by all means, we'll do that. If you get your hay rolled up and you're ready to take some samples, get a hold of me. The very last page in that booklet that you guys have will have my contact information here at the bank. You can call either of the Rolla locations and get a hold of me, and we'll have that here and can loan that out to you. With interest free, we'll loan that out to you. And you guys can take your, your samples and return it. So appreciate everybody coming. We do have a drawing for a Crystal Licks tub. Tom has it. You have it with you, right, Tom? So whoever wins it, it's 250 pounds. Just grab it, throw it in your truck. And, yeah. Yeah. So let's see who's going to go home with the tub. Let's go with Steve Green. Right there, Steve. Hey. Congratulations, Steve.
My wife will help a little.
issue. We couldn't get it done last year. We had everything geared up, ready to go, couldn't get it done. And this year, I think Scott had hit me up back in, I don't know, February, January, early February, and said, hey, let's do this. We cannot thank the Stream family enough for what they have not only done for the bank and teaching others about how to be efficient and productive in your farming business, but just the fellowship. Cindy comes in and she knows right where my Snickers jar is. She loves it. And their two daughters, folks, if you don't know them, get to talking to them. Taylor and Hannah. Taylor teaches ag down at Newburgh, so she's following right in Dad's footsteps, and it's very obvious that you need to call her to do your pay samples. So, Tom, we've got a little small card here, and it's the appreciation for you for what you guys did tonight and volunteering. Thank you all for coming. On behalf of FCNB, we'll be around as long as you guys want to be around. And if you guys ever need anything, we love to visit, and we're here for you. So on your way out, grab a bag, a gift bag. There's some gifts in there. Some new.
Favorite rain gauge.
Oh yeah, we've got our new rain gauges in there. So rain gauges, and they do not give those away in the thing fertilizer plant. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.